Welcome to Digitally Creative. I'm your host, Vincent Ferrari, and today I have a guest who I am so excited to talk about. Well, talk about and talk to, because if I'm talking about him, I don't need him to be here. That would be really weird. As I've said a couple of times, I was at RetroCon in Philly. I had a great time, and one of the people I met there, I was most excited to see what he had, and one of the people I got to meet and talk to for a while was a man who has made one of the coolest DeLorean replicas I have ever seen. And I've seen a few at many car shows. This one was definitely my favorite. And the man behind the car is my new friend, Mr. Tom Silknitter. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Pretty good, and you?
I'm doing wonderfully. It was really cool seeing the car in person because everybody says they have a really good, everybody that makes replicas say they have a really good one, but your attention to detail on yours was just like every time I looked, it was like opening up like another can of worms. Like there's another cool thing to see over here. There's another cool thing to see over here. You did such a beautiful job on that car.
Oh, thank you. There's a lot of people that always want to talk about having the most accurate car, and I'm never going to say that. Like Oliver Holler, who has his time machine and has done stuff with the Team Fox Foundation, everything, he's going to tell you, the thing is, anyone that does a car, of course, they're going to say they built the best car because they're the one that built it.
Mm-hmm.
I did my car before a lot of people were doing them. I'm in that very early wave of people that were going for screen accurate stuff. I was researching parts before there were forums dedicated to the cars. From a fan standpoint, I was the one that figured out what the flux capacitor box was. I found the company and talked to a guy who actually sold them the Universal, but we're going back to 2000.
Wow.
But now it's like a big business. There's people that have their companies dedicated to building time machine replicas. The replica world, there's full of people that do. I mean, we were doing small parts runs in the early 2000s, and now it's one guy doing this, another guy doing this, another guy making another thing. I mean, you can almost buy a time machine by pieces, almost as a kid anymore, it seems like. But the quality of the cars have gotten better. What you said, you've seen other time machines at shows. What was it that caught the flavor? Why did you like mine so much? I'm curious to hear what got your thing, because I'm not super 100% screen accurate, but I wasn't super worried about that because I was going for something different. I'm just curious what you were picking up on.
So one of the things that I noticed about yours, and I think we talked about this at the show, the first thing that jumped out at me was that yours wasn't pristine, shiny, clean, like it had just rolled off the factory floor and then had everything bolted to it and then rolled onto the show floor. It looks like you put a concerted effort into making it look like it was actually used, actually driven, actually a car that you would expect Doc Brown to work on, not a pristine off the showroom floor DeLorean. You did all the weathering that you were showing me the weathering on the motors, the vents on the top and around Mr. Fusion, and like the car looks like a used DeLorean, not a brand new DeLorean, because I did feel like a lot of the ones I've seen, they went so far to make it flashy, shiny, and pretty and they're beautiful. I mean, I think those are beautiful too. But if I was thinking, critically about what would the car look like if I looked at it up close in the movie, what would Doc Brown have built? It would have been rusty. It would have been weathered. It would have had, water run marks like the ones you did on the vents. And those are the kinds of details I like. Like you showed me a couple of dents that you left in it because it's like, yeah, that gives it character, and it's a stainless steel car. So of course it's going to have dents.
Yeah, so I mean that is what I've been proud of the car most, is actually the weathering. And the thing is, I am a movie prop collector. I was collecting props before I ever did a replica car, and I collect original props. I mean, yeah, I have a few replicas like the Time Machine, and I have a replica Brainwave Analyzer and a replica Proton Pack. I have a few replicas, but I'm not really a replica collector. I like to collect original screen used and production used props. I was doing that stuff when I was a really young kid, so I got into it very early. So the thing is the magic of movies And I mean, it might not be the same nowadays because more stuff is CGI. There's less props, and even the props they make these days, most of them are, cranked out of a machine. They 3D print
Yeah.
stuff. And there was always what fascinated me about movie props, especially when I was a kid, is when you watch it on screen, it looks awesome and great, and it just has a flavor. The thing is back then, of course, they were filming on film, so
Hmm.
they would have to use lighting and stuff in such a way to get a certain image that they could make into a print that you could see in a movie theater. The thing is the quality of the print compared to what we have on our 4K disc at home is not really what the original filmmakers were trying to present. I'm sure they probably would have loved to have more detail back then, but realistically, the end product was what was on the screen. And
Right.
there's a lot of stuff that disappears when you have a 35 millimeter print at a theater. A lot of mistakes that people pick on now in 4K and finding stuff because we can zoom in and see it. If you watch a 35 millimeter print of like Back to the Future Part 2, there are certain mistakes that you see more at home, and when you watch it on the screen in a darkened theater the way it was originally intended, you don't see it. So what was fascinating is you watch these movies, and you when you actually get to hold an original prop and see how they made it, you start to realize this is just handmade stuff. It looks fantastic and futuristic on screen, but in hand, it reminded me about kind of like when we used to make props for the High School Musical or High School Play. It just, there's something about the rudimentary of the stuff in person that is not there when it's filmed, and that to me is part of the magic of filmmaking. I'm always fascinated with the whole process of how they can take something mundane and make it look just completely awesome and neat. So the thing is my car. I'm replicating what Doc Brown did, but I'm also replicating a movie prop. And
Hmm.
my car, I do like to have it look like it was something you would have saw or thought it would be like if it came off of a set. I think a lot of people get so worried about being screen accurate and trying to duplicate every little detail. I mean, I'll be honest, like I don't, the guys that are really screen accurate, they'll be like, I don't have the right clamps on the wire looms, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. Flip side of that is, you know, when I was building my car, I mean, I would go down that rabbit hole too, of trying to be super accurate. I know all the details. I've researched the heck out of the cars. I have tons of reference material, and I was a source of a lot of reference material for a lot of the builders. So I know all the stuff that isn't quote unquote right with my car. But I also know that when they built the original cars for the sequels, they were replicating the stuff then. So if it was good enough for the sequels, to me, I'm okay with it.
Sure.
By the time they started doing the sequels, I mean, some of the stuff on those cars were made out of wood that they were replicating surplus they weren't finding or didn't have time to find, or So, I mean, there's some stuff on my car that is resin replicas because that's what we were able to do back then when I did the car. I got the car done in 2010. It was about a 3-year project.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the first.
That seems that actually seems fast because I've seen, I know people that are doing like full size R2D2s. I know people that have done Knight Rider. They've done kit replicas, and they talk about it being an on. Some of them talk about it being an ongoing project because it's such a big undertaking to finish the car. So
It
it's
went
been
through
at
a lot of versions though. I mean, first
okay.
I had limitations. I mean, first I was doing it where it was going to be a little bit temporary. And then I was trying to make vents out of thin metal that I could just do in house. I had a friend help me and he welded them up and everything. So I mean, I mean, I built it, but I mean, I had people that helped, of course. I mean, it's never
Sure.
really a lone adventure. The conduit is the conduit I put on my car back then. I would like slightly better conduit, but it is the conduit I made. And you know what? I mean, I suffered to do it, and it is what it is. That's my. There are things that I would like to do better with my car. And the thing is, with these cars, you can always rework them, and you can
Sure.
always improve them. I have. I mean, I have probably boxes of stuff that I could do to make my car more screen accurate. I just have it sitting here, and I don't know. Like I want to, I can go and revisit it, and I can change things out. Like the heating plate on the back, and
Hmm.
like the relays behind the passenger seat. I mean, but then at the same time, I'm like, well, that is the car I built, and it's kind of what I could do at the time, and in and of itself, it starts to show people how we were doing the cars back then. In a sense,
Sure.
even that replicant can be a time capsule, but
I think we talked about this. I think we talked about this at the show, but for the benefit of the listeners, was there anything that when you were building your car that you didn't really have reference material for, that you kind of took an educated guess and just kind of took your own creative license with it and tried to just get into the mindset of the people that designed the original car, and then you tried to mimic what they were thinking and come up with something that looked good in a particular spot?
well, there are still some pieces of stuff on the car that we don't know what the original filmmakers actually used, but by 2008, the reference pictures that I got and spread amongst the replica builders and everything. I mean, in terms of like in terms of making it look the way it should, and the stuff that was
Hmm.
still on the car that people had access to see, to take photos of. Um, Really, not really in terms of the details of what go on the car. I mean, the stuff is like nitpick stuff. I mean, some of the stuff is stuff that only the guys that were hands on with the restorations, stripping the car down, would know, or be able to know, like exactly, how maybe panels inside the car were actually cut, angles, little stuff, very, very tiny minutia that really, you would be very hard pressed to actually know or ever see. I mean, there is value in knowing that stuff, but there's also a point where, the reward from knowing it or doing it in your car, it's going to be on your personal level. The general public's not going to really ever notice it, and
I gotcha.
will they appreciate it? I don't know. A lot of people like to do it so they can brag amongst themselves in the circles, but that's my personal opinion, but it's great. Everyone can do what they want to do.
Sure.
I was doing when I was working on the Haggerty documentary on how they, inducted the original A car into the National Vehicle Historic Registry. Like I said, there's no trophy at the end. There's no one that's going to get a trophy for having the best replica. They can say it all they want. They can do it, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to do this stuff. We're all fans, and that's my line in the documentary, and I still stand by it. A lot of people have money invested in these cars now. I mean, my car, I don't have that much invested in the whole car, the car and the conversion. People would fall their seat probably if they heard what it really was, what I have it. People are now spending, 70 to 100 grand between a car and converting it. And that's a whole different ball game than what I did when I did my car,
Do you
but
of
then people
oh
have money invested, and then they have to do events, and they have to try to get contracts and do as much as they can to make money with the car, because they have to get a return on their investment. And I don't have that money drive in me for the car. That's not why I did the car. I
mhm.
mean,
It was a passion project.
yeah, well, as a kid, I sat in one of the original official cars that Universal had commissioned, and Jay Orberg did it. And Jay Orberg is whose image archive I bought out, and that's where a lot of the source stuff happened. There was a lot of other source photos that I was tracking down, but even before that. But as a kid, I sat and I knew it wasn't right. I was giving the guy a hard time about things. Um, Later on, I really actually appreciate that car more, because it was an official car that Universal toured the country with, and Jay Orberg used parts of one of the B car that was hit by the train. So there was actually screen use parts on the car. But that car was gutted during the restoration of the A car to help restore the A car, is how they marketed that.
One of the things that so I follow, and I imagine it's in your wheelhouse, but I don't know if you follow them. There's a YouTube channel called Night Rider Historians.
Oh yeah, Joe
Um,
and them. I know them quite
yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yes. Yep.
They're wonderful. They're wonderful guys. And, one of the things that fascinates me about, the filming of Knight Rider, which is interesting because that was also Universal,
Yep.
is that there were so many cars. There was a hero car that was the hero car. Like for any given season, there was one hero car. And then there were a lot of there were stunt cars. And they had, after the second season, they had a special jump car, which was just a dune buggy with a fiberglass shell that looked like a Trans Am sitting over it, and all these cars that they had. And I noticed you mentioned that the A car was inducted into the museum. Then there's, you saw the B car, which was destroyed by the train. How many cars were used in the three movies? Was it
Yeah.
was
So
it a crazy number, or is it just a couple of
it's
cars?
it's a total of seven.
Wow.
For the first movie, they had three cars. There was the A car, which was a hero car. The B car was a stunt car, and originally they intended for it not to have much interior, and then they realized that they did. And the B car and the A car were very, very similar. I mean, the B car almost had as good this same amount of detail by the time filming was done. There was some labels they didn't put in, and it's just a little bit less. The B car was also their stunt car, so they put fire nozzles in the wheel wells, and they had a manifold, and they would have like a propane type concoction that they could run, and they had to have a speed thing set up so that if the car went under a certain speed, they would shut off the igniters for it because they couldn't have a safety risk of the car catching fire.
Oh, wow.
So the scenes they were doing that so they would have practical effects on film. Industrial light magic would augment them. The thing is, most of the time on set, it did not actually work. So I think her name was Peggy Reagan at ILM had to animate them in. I'd have to double check my book, but I think that was her name.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, a lot of times that effect didn't work. But and then there was another car they called the C car, which is a car that they actually cut up and they would use it on the stage, so they could put the camera inside the car. Anytime you see like a lot of the actors in the car, that's usually that one. In the second and third movie, they used that one as the close up interior car as well. In the third movie, they actually took it on location a few times, so they could get shots outside from Michael J. Fox's point of view in the car.
Hmm.
So that car did actually go on set on location. The A car was reused in both films as the A car, as the hero car. After the first movie, they let the A car sit out on the for park guests to see at Universal Studios Hollywood, and then the car had to be refabbed even just for the movie. So for the second movie,
Yeah.
the B car was actually kept in storage, and that one was actually more film ready than the A car was. So and they had in the second movie they made a fiberglass replica, so the whole car was fiberglass that they hung from cranes and forklifts and stuff, and they would use the A car on a forklift too, but with the crane they could have a small piano wire and they could float it around and everything. So some
Hmm.
of the stuff was that car, and then in the third movie they built three more cars. So technically, the one car that I say is seven isn't really a real car. It was a replica fiberglass car. Um, and the third movie, they had two cars that they took the DeLorean frames, cut up, and put sandrail chassis on them. So they were actually like dune buggies. They were Volkswagen powered. So the scenes that were out at Monument Valley where it's bouncing around the desert, those were those two cars. And then they built another car that was a dedicated stunt car for train work. We call it the Oxnard car because it's most seen up close when Michael J. Fox is rolling before the car gets hit by the train. See, as we call it a stunt car because there was the car that popped the wheel on the train tracks. It was that car. It was rigged for that
Okay.
scene. So they had two cars that they would put on the train tracks, the B car and this car. And they ended up using the B car as the car they cut up and put explosives in it. And when the train hits it, they trigger the explosion to hit right before the train hit it. So it
Oh,
was all a
man.
timing thing. So basically, the car is hit, the train hits suspended parts.
Hmm.
When they filmmakers were watching train wreck films, they noticed most of the time cars would just get pushed over, and they didn't want that. They wanted the car to be destroyed. So Michael Lantieri was special effects supervisor for the second and third movies. That's what they did. They cut the whole DeLorean up, and they filled it full of explosives. And when the stuntman cleared the way, he hits the trigger, and if you slow the movie down really, with 4K, you can see a little puff of the actual explosion and stuff. You might see a little bit of flame, but again, in the movie theater, you don't see it really. You know.
So DeLoreans as a car have a reputation as being leaky. One, I've heard leaky when referred to like the gull wing doors about a million times and the windows and all that, but also as not being the most wonderfully well made cars ever made, being charitable as possible. So I'm wondering what condition was your car in when you got it, and how long did it take to get it roadworthy before you started doing the conversion?
I mean, I bought it was roadworthy. I bought a car that had a decent service history on it.
Oh,
When
okay.
I bought it, I did a few things just to make it a little bit more reliable. I used the car as a daily driver for 3 years before I converted it.
Oh, wow.
I rear-ended someone by accident, and after that, when I pieced it together, that's when I decided to convert it. I
How I
mean,
bet who took the most damage?
they can be made reliable.
Mhm,
I mean, the fuel injection system. It's a Bosch system. They use it in a lot of European cars: Porsche, Ferrari, Lotus, Volkswagen, many more. Volvo, obviously, because the Volvo shared engine, Mercedes. The system is a fuel injection system that is mechanically based, but different variations of it have some electrical controls to help with emissions. So that's the issue, is trying to get all those things to work together. There's vacuum components and then electrical components. If it was a strict mechanical, it would be a little bit easier to work, and the cars will work even almost as a strictly mechanical system. But
oh,
there
wow.
was the things for emissions that hamper that. So you have oxygen sensors, a frequency valve. There's all these little things that go on, and a lot of times these cars don't run well because the systems have not been maintained. And like I said, it's
Mhm.
trying to get all those things to work at once. That 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 is the fun joy of it, kind of. Like I, I don't, it's a system that they came up with at the time to meet the needs of the emissions requirements. And
Mhm.
like I said, when all of them work well, they start really well and everything. When they don't, or when they get neglected, that's when you have problems. The fuel distributors do not like to be sitting. The injectors don't. If you have a bad spray pad in the injectors, the car won't run right. So um, I've did a lot of work on it, and I've worked in the auto business, so that helped. So
Well, I was gonna ask you that because I know a lot there's a lot of obviously, there's a lot of people who are, good at making screen replicas. There are a lot of people that are very good prop makers, or a lot of people that know the ins and outs of making and that kind of stuff. But I was wondering what your mechanical background is, and how much of the mechanical stuff on the car you did versus bringing it to someone that could service it. Like, is it something you just did over time, or was it something that you had a mechanic working on it, or was it a little bit of both?
well, I've been managing repair shops for 18 years. I mean, right now I just work at a shop in the office 2 days a week, and then my real background is I was a news sports photographer, and the newspaper magazine business died in the early 2000s, and I saw it and I left. And my other passion was cars, so I started managing a Bosch exotic shop out in Devon, where we were mostly Porsche and Ferrari. So I would take my cars there, and I'm a Lotus Esprit guy as well. Too, the Lotus and DeLorean have a shared
I
history.
love the Lotus
Yeah,
Esprit.
yeah. Lotus did the engineering on the DeLorean. The DeLorean is basically a heavy, slow Lotus when you think about it. Um, I mean, on
I
this,
like that.
yeah, on this car, I mean, mechanically on my car, um, I think I'm the only one that's touched it since 2005 when I bought it. I mean, when the clutch failed on the car when we were filming a Retrocon commercial, and if you find the one where the Baroness steals the DeLorean, when it goes away, you'll see this little puff, and that was the last remains of the clutch. And luckily, I was going downhill, so I could get out of the frame. Oh shoot, that thing fell.
Oh, man.
Um, so, hold on, I gotta get the shadow back, or I knocked that there. Oh, sorry, there we go. Um,
Okay.
I mean, the clutch. I mean, I had it at another shop I was at. I was at one shop and then a BMW specific shop for a while. So I had it towed there, and I mean, the one mechanic helped me do some stuff on it, but he helped me take it apart, and then I put it all back together. But
That's so great. I love the car. I love the car. I mean, it was the first thing I said when I met you is how much I love the car and how beautiful it was and how much I appreciated the work you put into it. But then seeing other people looking at the car and having the same reaction, that's got to be like the greatest feeling in the world. Like they build, and when I got my tickets for RetroCon, in on the mailing list, they were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have an A-Team van, we're gonna have a General Lee, we're gonna have a DeLorean." And I was like, "That's awesome!" Like I knew they were gonna look good, but just the warm fuzzies of seeing that car there, and then seeing like all the people reacting the same way and pointing and like really looking close at all the detail work, that's got to be like the greatest feeling in the world for you because you have all these people constantly appreciating the work you did on this car.
Yeah, I mean it's neat. It's neat to have other people enjoy what I enjoy or what attracted me to the car. Um, I mean, I put behind me, there's a sign there, so at least there was something DeLorean in there. That was from 2015 at the AACA Museum up in Hershey. I had the car up there and did a display and curated display for Back to the Future for the 30th anniversary of the movie. So I had my car and I had some original Ron Cobb blueprints and production notes and stuff up there, and some original props and collectibles. This past summer, my car was up at the Boyertown Historic Vehicle Museum all summer, and I actually put some of my original props that I've never put out on public on display there, and a lot of original notes and stuff. And the museum, they got attention with Channel 6, and they had a very good response because of it, so that helped them out. But the interesting story is in 2015, I had my car at the museum and I had it already scheduled. It was supposed to stay there until Future Day on October 21st, but I had RetroCon. I've done every RetroCon except for one. The first one after COVID. I wasn't really feeling it, and I was it was September, and usually I get bad allergies and I always get like sick around there. And that year I just wasn't, I didn't feel like risking it and that sort of thing. But, when in 2015, there was someone that rents cars and they like the broker time machine replicas. And there was a gig, and I think it was up in New York, and it might have been a really big gig. And, they told me it was like $15,000. And I said, well, my car's at the museum. They're like, well, you should do this event. It's this money and this and that. I said, well, I'm like, I've told the museum they would have the car there. I'm not going to pull it in and out another
Hmm.
time, especially since it was going to be on Future Day. And the whole thing is my car was going to be there for Future Day for them,
Right.
because they were doing stuff with the car, and Pepsi was sponsoring stuff with the museum, and they had the TV station coming out, and they were doing, I had my obligation with them. And
Of
this
course.
person said to me, well, how much is the museum paying you? And I'm like, they're not paying me anything. He's like, so wait, you have your car at the museum and you're not making any money? I said, no, actually, I lose money because I'm trailering the car up there and running a truck and trailer. I'm like, but the fact that, and then he's like, well, I guess you just don't care about money. I do care about money. I care about making money at my job, and that's what it is. The cars to me are my hobby,
Right.
and that's how I've always been about it. Like the Boyertown Museum, they were selling my book, and that's the only little bit of money that I did, and I even gave them wholesale pricing. So like over 50% of each book, the money was going to the museum. It's a great museum, and I wanted to help them out and
Hmm.
everything. So, um, I'm not. I don't go at it going after having to get the money or the gigs or the attention. I mean, it's everyone has a place in the hobby, and everyone's doing what they do. And mine is, this is a car I built, and if people can enjoy it, great. I mean, at RetroCon, I mean, one of the most satisfying moments as a time machine builder was, and it's kind of ironic, but being a photographer too, being able to help someone see the car who's blind.
Wow.
It was very sombering. This gentleman came up with his father at this past RetroCon, and he asked if his kid could touch the car. A lot of people want to touch the car because they're fascinated that the car is made out of
Sure.
stainless. I could get rich charging people just to touch the car. Yeah. It's like they never felt stainless before. car, on their stove or their sink or their kitchen. The fact that it's a car, it's something
Right.
that makes them all different. But anyway, so he says it, and I get it because a lot of people ask if they can touch the car. And then I look over and I saw he had the stick, and that, I was like, oh, he might be blind. So then I went to the father, and I was very delicate and not being very loud, but I'm like, can he see anything? I didn't know how to handle the situation exactly.
Hmm.
And he's like, you can ask him direct. So I asked him, the son, and he was already touching the fender and stuff. And I said, can you see any shapes or shades and stuff? Because some people can. At the one BMW shop I managed, there was a guy who was blind. He could just see kind of shapes, and he was a mechanic, and he would actually fix cars. And it turns out
Wow.
he could do stuff that other mechanics couldn't, because mechanics, a lot of times, they'll see something that's hard and they put in their head it's hard. There was stuff he could do,
Hmm.
like pull transmissions out of cars that everyone else would complain about. But because he was blind and he was feeling stuff, it's incredible. He was at that shop before I was there. I never got to work with him, but I know for a fact that this guy did do it because I heard it from four other people that worked at the place before me. So I mean, it's so they might not, someone might not be able to see, but they're aware, or they might be able to sense stuff that I can't. So I asked him if he had, heard Back to the Future, if he knew the movie, and he did. So the first thing I did is I said to him, I said, I don't know if you know this about DeLoreans or not, but one of the big things that makes them so interesting is that the doors don't move the normal way. And
Hmm.
again, I'm going to say up. I'm going to say this and that, and I don't know. Like, even as I'm describing stuff, like if he can, like it's so, we take for granted simple stuff like the doors go up.
Yeah.
Is he going to know what up means that way? I think so. But so what I did is I said, just have trust in me. I said, but I want you to put your hand on the door and just notice what the door does. That the door doesn't do this. It comes up at an angle.
Uh-huh.
So when I did that, his eyes went open. His eyebrows went real big, and then he could feel that. And then he's feeling the door above him. So then I'm like, I really realized he was, really getting into it, and I wanted him to experience something with Back to the Future or the Time Machine. As you know, seeing my car, the back deck has a lot of stuff on it, and I'm
Hmm.
sure he would have a blast feeling all the different stuff. But
Sure.
that's not the place to be just feeling around, not knowing. There's a lot of sharp edges on there, and I did
Yeah.
not want him to get hurt. So I then thought, what could I do? It sounded like I got the sense from the father that he wasn't going to sit in the car at all and try to get in and out of the car. So then I realized that, like, the time circuit handle on my car, it pops on and off, and I've left it that way because
Hmm.
people knock when it's fixed, people break it. Actually, the first RetroCon was the first thing I ever did with the car. The first person that sat in it broke the switch.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Oh
so that's how
man.
it first started. Well, anyway, I took the handle off, and I talked to him about. I said, when Doc Brown first talks to Marty about the time machine, he turns the time circuits on and makes beep 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 all these noises and everything, and he was nodding his head, and he said yes, and I said, well, I said it's a different type of handle. And I held it at the angle. I said, put your hand on it, and when Doc turns it on, it does this. And I said, and part of the story, how Marty goes in accidental in time, is it sits here and the gear shift is here. And I said, if you take your hand and hit it, this is why in the story it happens. And he just kept feeling the handle and stuff. And I could just see just how happy he was, and the father too. But it was just really, that's probably the most like emotional moment I've ever had with the car with someone else, and again, I'm a photographer and I use my eyes and I want people to see things. There's another gentleman, Marty Miller. He is a DeLorean owner as well, but he's very active in the Star Wars world, and he has an R2D2 replica. He was the one walking around with Chewbacca at RetroCon, and he had R2
Oh, that was
fly out.
him?
That's him,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
So it turns out,
7 something feet tall. It was pretty damn impressive.
yeah, he has a pretty neat setup for that. Um, But he's a photographer as well. He's a wedding photographer, and he had someone who was blind as well, and he was doing the same thing with the R2D2. And I didn't know that. It was one of my friends told me after the fact. So I thought it was really kind of interesting that here we're both photographers and we're both trying to, you know, help people still see even though they can't see. Sorry, I was fixing that
No
there.
problem. I think
And
one
I'm
of the
sorry that the
things
basset might whine every now and then.
one of the things I noticed about your car as opposed to the General Lee and the A Team van, and this is not a knock on them in any way, but it was the difference in how you presented the car versus how they presented theirs. The General Lee and the A Team van were both roped off and very tightly controlled as to who could go look at it, and they were being watched like a hawk. And your DeLorean, I know you were watching it because I saw you there, but it wasn't like I didn't get the impression that you were hawkishly watching every person, like waiting to pounce on them just in case they got too close to your car.
I'm sorry, that
So,
light thing again.
oh, no problem. Um, I think it kind of encouraged people because it's interesting that you talked about a blind person wanting to touch the car, needing to touch the car to kind of, quote, visualize it. And your car really invited somebody to actually do that and take a closer look at it. Whereas the other ones were kind of like, these are for you to look at from a distance unless you pay us, and then you can come up close and look at it.
Um,
Um,
I mean, I do try to. Well, I enclose the car quite a bit, especially because the rear deck. I'm sorry about these dogs. Are they too
no
loud
worries.
on your microphone, or do you hear
I
just a
can
little?
I can hear them, buddy. It's not
All
the end of the
right.
world.
I know my wife will be feeding them shortly, but it's not dinner time yet. But anyway, um, no, I mean, I do watch a lot of what's going on, and I charge people if they want to sit in the car.
Hmm.
Again, I'm covering my trailer expenses.
Of course.
And also wear and tear in the cars. I mean, things do break. I've had turn signal switches break because of people getting in and out of the cars. I've had people break some of the lights on the top, and it's frustrating, but it is what it is. But I mean, I'm very guarded about the back of the car because of
Of
the sharp
course.
vents. I don't want people back there unless they're supervised. Um, the thing is I let people get pictures next to the car. I don't charge them if they want to do that. If they want to sit in the car, they can sit in the car. And if it's a group of people together, I'll usually try to bunch them up as one thing.
Hmm.
The A-Team van, that was the first event he ever did, and he bought the car. I'm sorry, the van from Tony, who runs RetroCon. That was Tony's A-Team van,
Oh, wow.
and this was a neighbor in the neighborhood got it. So that was his first event. He wasn't really um, used to that sort of thing. And with the General Lee, part of that also is you have to remember with the stars and everything, it had to be that way because they're doing photo ops with the stars and the car.
Right.
And then Tom did do it. Fleece did do. I hope I pronounce his name right. The guy with the General Lee. I mean, he did a nice display. I mean, he had the boar's
Sure
nest. I
did.
mean, he went all out in it.
Hmm.
But I think if he's had that car at RetroCon before outside, and he was very accessible with stuff. And I've been at other conventions with him, and he's very accessible. The factor is, though, is you had the official group photos with the stars for Dukes of Hazzard, and that was a big deal.
Sure.
So I mean, they had to have it kind of be that way more. If you were at, like I was with him at a MesaCon very years and years ago, and I mean, his car was just sitting there. There was no ropes or anything around it. You just
Right. Okay.
pay to
Gotcha.
open the door and you get in. So I would have to say I think a lot of that mindset would be because of that difference there. And the guys with the Jurassic Park Jeep, he always has his roped off because he has a lot of little props and stuff around it and everything. I mean, unfortunately, if you don't do it, people sometimes will take advantage.
Yeah.
So that's
I
why, if you notice too, most of the time, if that's why the doors stay closed more
Sure.
than not.
Sure.
I used to leave the doors open so people could see in it, but people decide, oh, I just want to jump in the car. Yeah.
Mm.
So then, that's one of the perks if someone pays, then to sit in the car, then they can also get to be, see everything and get in it. But that's also one of the things that, I do have to put that little roadblock up because when the doors open, people want to just jump in the car.
One of my favorite things that I saw after the show, and I had when you and I became friends on Facebook, was seeing the celebrities. So I saw Greg Evigan was over by the car. I saw Tom Schneider was. I think he took a picture in the car, if I'm not mistaken.
Schneider, we
But
stood next to the car. Yeah.
okay, yeah, you had like everybody that was at the show that was sitting at the autograph tables at some point was over there near your car,
Um, I
that
don't
was
know
pretty
about
cool.
everyone. I just had actually the only one was John with my car.
Oh,
I did with John. I mean, unless other people did and took photos, and I didn't see it. I
oh,
don't
so the
know.
photos you took might have just been okay. So
Yeah,
because
it
I
was
saw
just
you take,
Schneider. Yeah, he was
gotcha.
there across from us and everything, and we were hoping to get like Tom Wopat and maybe Catherine, but they were really busy, and
They were busy.
I mean John was very busy too. I mean he
Yeah.
was a workhorse with everyone there, very nice, sincere fellow and everything. So but I mean it's neat sometimes at RetroCon to get the get the stars to get next to it. Last year, Claudia Wells, who was Jennifer in Back to the Future One, was there,
Oh
and she had
wow.
it with the car. Um,
I was going to ask that. Has anyone from the cast or the original or either any of the original movies have they seen the car and
just
what was their feedback?
Claudia Wells, and then several years ago at RetroCon, we had Dom Fulilove, who played Goldie Wilson. So those are the only two that have seen the car in
Okay,
person or anything. Yeah.
cool. Are you getting requests from around the country for the car, or is it mostly just like Northeast type shows?
I get some Northeast stuff, but I really don't go after it. There's so many people that do, and there's like agents that broker cars. There's like I don't even remember the exact names, like Delorean Rental or something, Delorean Time Machine Rentals or something.
Oh
I
wow.
mean, there are people that like now have agents brokering the stuff for them or run a website, and then they get a fee off of it and all that. I mean, with the truck and trailer issues, and I haven't invested in my own truck and trailer for it. I really, I really don't go after stuff. If people want to come out to me and ask me to do something, I'll consider it. But if it's a convention or some event that people are charging people to go to, I ask that they cover my expenses, the truck and trailer, and the expenses for like RetroCon is usually it used to be like a little under 300. Now with the way cost of stuff has gone up, was like 450 just to get the car there and back. So
I hadn't
um,
even, it's funny you saying this because I hadn't even thought of that because obviously, it's a car. And in my head, it's like, well, it's a
It's
car. You
some
just
people
take it there.
drive them. I
But
mean, a friend of mine in Malvern has a DeLorean replica who covered me in 21. I mean, he drives his on the streets and stuff. And I have, I mean, if I got antique tags on it legally, I could. But, to me, that is opening yourself up to, huge liabilities. Terry and Oliver, I mean, he drives his car all over the place. I mean, he drives it state to state. But I also know that he is a professional, prop builder and
mhm.
everything. And I mean, I've seen some replica cars and bits and pieces on them aren't really attached, and all you need is that thing to go off and
Oh
hit.
wow.
You hit someone else's car,
Yeah.
and most people don't really, I think, are aware of like the different type of insurances involved. It's one thing, you have a regular vehicle, but you have it modified and you're using it to make money for events and your rep. Like I feel like a lot of people are playing with fire a little bit there. I mean, my wife is in insurance, so it's in my mindset. But I mean,
It's
just
good. That's a good thing to have in your
tra-
back pocket.
trailering the car, it's nerve wracking enough as it is because people come up next to you in the blind
Right.
spots and they're taking photos and they just sit there. So when you're driving the car on the street, it's worse. I mean, I have driven my car in my neighborhood a little bit, sometimes just
Mhm.
to stretch
Sure,
its
you have
wings and
to.
stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get it. It's neat. A lot of people do drive them, but I'll tell you, the way the lawsuits are and technicalities, and you know, you got a replica thing that you put in your car and it flies off. Then who's liable for all that stuff? I don't want to find out. I mean, granted, when it's on the truck and trailer, I mean, it's still going through the air and stuff, and I still have the risk of something coming off. I guess I have this, but I mean, I feel like it's. I don't know. If
It's
it's
probably
on the
asking for
trailer, I'm
trouble.
not actually driving it. I'm hauling it. But
Right.
I mean, we all have risk and all that stuff. I don't know. I'm not interested in the nerves of driving it to events and stuff. I mean, I get nerve enough just trailering it.
Well, we have about 15 minutes left in the time that I said that we were going to have you. So, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your book because you have a book, and the way I understand it, and I could be wrong, but the book is about your build specifically, right?
No,
It's a li-
it's all about the building of the original cars by the filmmakers.
Oh wow, okay,
It has
okay,
nothing. I mean, there's maybe two mentions in there about my car, and I have a few mentions of some of the replica cars, but that have some important history with the franchise. But no, that's all about the filmmakers. That's my real interest in all this stuff is documenting what those guys did, how they did it, and where it came from. You know, I mean, my interest in photography came out of my interest in filmmaking, which was from my interest in Back to the Future. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with comic books. I love comic books, and I used to love to draw. Excuse me. I always wanted to be like a comic book artist, and I used to draw football and baseball drawings. I used to draw pictures where a guy would be sliding into the base and his cleat would be touching the base, but then the ball would be in the guy's glove. And it was all these ball on the fingertip stuff, which is the exact stuff I do in my photography. The thing is,
your
at the
photography, by the way, and I'm not trying to cut you off, and I'm sorry, but your
no, it's okay.
photography, I had no idea about this about you until we were friends on Facebook. Your
Hmm.
photography is exceptional.
Oh,
I
thank
know
you.
hearing that from a non-professional photographer, I'm sure has about as much meaning as a glass of water, but it really is your photography is exceptional. Like it's you capture action so beautifully. There was one shot where you were doing a chasing shot of you. I think it was your car, and you had basically a dolly shot of your car with the background in motion and your
Oh
car
no, that
sitting still.
that was Joe Butch actually driving his car away from the shop I
Okay,
managed. Yeah,
it looks so like I know how hard because I do photography also. I mean, I'm not at the level you're at, but I understand the difficulty in capturing the stuff that you capture. Your photography is amazing.
oh,
It's
thank
really
you.
you're one of the
It,
few people who I don't follow for because it's photography of something specific I want to see. I just enjoy your photography.
I appreciate it. I mean, the what happened with was at the age of 10 I started to think I wasn't good enough to be a comic book artist at the age of 10, right? I'm already deciding this.
Wow, you're quite the
and,
realist.
and then and then Back to the Future Part 2 was announced, and I was obsessed with Back to the Future. I write in my book in my introduction about how I got introduced to it and everything. But the thing is Channel 29 Fox had a contest where you could win tickets to the premiere of Back to the Future in Philadelphia. You got to see it 2 days early. And I sent in a
Nice.
postcard, and the next day my name was picked. I don't know how it got there so fast. I guess it was meant to be. And my
Wow.
mom didn't want me to stop my homework to watch to see if I won. So she told me I could record it. She's like, "There's no way you won." She's like, "It went out in the mail yesterday, and the mail didn't get picked up till late, like 5:30, which is late for us." And I'm like, "Well, Mom, what if I won?" So she said I could tape it, which is probably the best thing ever because I did win, and I have on tape my name going on the screen as a winner. So, you're 10 years old, you're with your dad going down to Center City, Philadelphia, Monday on a school night. There's about 5 to 7 stock DeLoreans parked out front in Center City, Philadelphia. It was the Boyd Theater. It's an Art Deco theater. It's gone now, but it was a grand theater, Art Deco, beautiful staircase, beautiful architecture. They're giving out freebies. They're giving out movie posters and pizza cups and buttons and pins and stickers and stuff. And I'm a comic book collector and a toy guy, and my dad's a collector, and my uncle's a toy collector, and my mom collects antiques. So we're a collecting family. So I'm getting as much as I can, and and then you got the DeLoreans out there, and some of them, weren't like perfect and clean, which. At 10 years old, I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Now I'm older. I'm like, I respect those guys more because they were driving their car.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so you go into the movie theater, and my dad was talking to this couple people, and I wasn't paying much attention. So we go in the movie theater, and it was such a great experience. It was the first time I was in a theater with a balcony, other than when we would have like movie day at the high school auditorium. Yeah, I'm sorry, elementary school auditorium. So at first I'm like, what's going on here? It's on a stage and there's a balcony. And then it turns out Tom Wilson's family was there because Tom Wilson's from the area. He's a
Oh
1979
wow.
graduate of Radnor.
How
And
about
so
that?
Tom Wilson's family was who my dad was talking to. So they said that Tom Wilson's family was there, but Tom Wilson couldn't be there because of he was working on another movie, which was Back to the Future Part 3,
Back to the Future
which
3, yeah.
I knew because the novel came out before the movie, and I read the novel before I saw the movie. I'm one of these. I love spoilers. I love finding out as
Well,
much as I can beforehand. I know
not
some people
me.
aren't. I got that's fine. I my uncle Ron and I were the same way with that stuff. We would find. You go to a convention, you could find an early script for Batman Returns before Batman Returns was out. We just want to find out as much as we could about it. I know a
Mhm.
lot of people feel like they get ruined with spoilers, and I guess it is, but the thing is what happens is I read the novel and I saw the behind the scenes making of the movie, and in my head all this stuff was going around. So I knew people made movies, but what it was that moment when Tom Wilson's family cheered when he showed up on screen, and then when his name was on the screen at 10 years old, I'm like, wait a minute, someone from around here made this movie. And that's what made me want to become a filmmaker. And I thought to do film, I should have photography. So I joined the school newspaper and I said I want to do photos. And I automatically asked for sports because sports was the closest thing I could ever do to making photos of action that is like my comic book drawings. That's the only thing. Like this afternoon, I was shooting Westchester University soccer, and the people
Mhm.
in the air, and that's the closest thing sports photography is to doing the superhero stuff I drew as a kid. And what happened was the photography, I just picked up and ran with it. And I ended up becoming more of a still guy than a filmmaker because, as I say, and I say it to everyone, is I work with the 2D image of the draw of the comic book artist. It's a plain 2D image, but I'm working with the tools and methods of a filmmaker, lenses, back then film stock, lighting, all that equipment that the filmmaker uses. So that's why it's the perfect marriage for me. And I did it for a number of years, and I was, pretty successful with it. I worked with major magazines. I worked with Major League Baseball team. I used to cover the Eagles and the Phillies for one of the major dailies in Philadelphia for a number of years. And I kept seeing that, yeah, I was making more money each year, but I was also seeing that the money that was being made, the effort to get it was going away. And I was also seeing the expense of the digital equipment versus return on that equipment. So
Yeah.
I've always had a business mindset about that sort of thing. So I left it in 2005. I really didn't pick up the camera much for the last 18 years. I would do select assignments for people. If people reached out for me, like I did this one magazine shoot for this local author who, I took photos when he was coaching one of the high school teams around here. In those 18 years, though, of not shooting much, I mean, you look at my pictures now, you probably are like, what? You didn't do this for 18 years. But what it was is the Back to the Future stuff was always my interest too. So with backtothefuture.com, which was originally a fan club back in the day, well, I would do and start doing articles and interviews for him. So you see, my background from being in actual newspapers is I approach this stuff as an actual journalist. I follow the
Mhm.
whole rules that we do as real journalists should do, which unfortunately most of what passes as journalism these days would never pass muster with any of my editors 20 years ago. But that's a whole different
Amen.
story.
Amen to that.
Everything is opinion now, and the thing
Mhm.
is and part of the reason why I left is the consolidation,
Mhm.
in that whole industry. Back when I was working newspapers, just in local communities, you could have 3 or 4 different local papers owned by different groups. Next thing you know, all of them are bought by one corporation. That corporation sells it. Next thing you know, equity funds are running these newspapers and media conglomerates, and they don't really care about running
Yeah, and
media.
the wall between news, opinion, and
It's
advertising just
gone.
kinda fell.
See,
It's
yeah,
just completely gone.
because it's there's a whole in school they teach you, remember, go home, watch the news,
Yeah.
report on it. Well, the
Mhm.
thing is you get someone opinionated, you put them on TV, they dress them up the same way, you put banner headlines underneath it. It looks like news, but if you dissect it, a lot of it's opinion. And if you look at all the different sides, which you know, which is funny because all these different sides are all owned by the same corporate interest at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Anyway,
For the
it's
most part,
sad. It's sad, uh,
it is.
so I left that world, you know, but no, but with Back to the Future.com, I was doing these interviews with the people that worked on the movies. I started with Andrew Probert, who was one of the designers. He also designed Airwolf, he co-designed the Enterprise for Next Generation, and then one interview I'd roll into another interview, and those interviews became the crux of my book, and that's how that was grew. So my involvement with Back to the Future.com for all those years kept my feet wet with like a journalism interest, and I was still able
Hmm.
to use that talent. And then it's just managing shots for years and years. I started take some pictures again, just of cars at work, and then I found a niche doing that stuff. So a lot of my work now is doing automotive photography for dealers that are selling,
That's
high end
fantastic.
cars and stuff. I mean, today I was shooting this morning an early '60s Cadillac Eldorado convertible, big fins.
Oh God.
I mean, yesterday I was shooting a G wagon, a Porsche 968, a Mercedes SL. I mean, it's oh, dang. I'm sorry about that. I should have put gaffer's tape on that. I'm just gonna put some gloss over it. Like I said, I do photography, and look at this quality. But I didn't do film. I didn't end up doing film or video. But no.
That's
So I
all
mean,
good, my
that's
friend.
how the book I self published.
Hmm.
And yeah, I did it through Amazon, and I did have a copy editor, although I still find some stuff, and my wife pointed out something to me, and I'm like, but Amazon does allow you to fix small stuff. So the
Hmm.
book out there now is a lot better than the very, very first one I put out.
It's
It's
the
just,
upside of print on demand,
yeah,
right?
it's little spelling mistakes or a couple little grammar things.
Hmm.
But there was a certain point where I just kind of had to like finally let it go, and it is what it is. I mean, there's a lot of content in there. The source interviews are in there. I did a narration from the point of view of the making of the movies, and then interwove it with the creation of the car, and then you interwove the narration from the movie to the car to justify why they were doing certain things. So, it was fun. It that took me years to do. Originally, I wanted to do a book about the creation of the first movie and really
Hmm.
dig into that. And then there was an author, Case and Gaines, I think his name is how you pronounce his name. He wrote a book where we're going. We don't need roads, and he contacted me as a resource.
Nice.
And as we were talking, the more I realized he actually had a paid publisher and an actual signed deal. So as I was talking to him, I started to realize that we were going down the same route. And
Hmm.
so then I decided I wanted to do one that was more centered on the DeLorean. And for a little while, I was talking with Joe Walzer, who was the head of the A team, A team, A car restoration, and he wanted to do a DeLorean book, and he was going to focus on the restoration part of it. And I was going to have the guts of the history of the movie car itself. And then he got the book deal with Bob Gale, and then that thing turned into something different. That was that Doc Brown workshop manual, but that's more like a fictionalized workshop manual that tries to explain how the time machine is in the narrative of the universe of Back to the Future. And they have a
Kind of like the Star Trek service manual that I have. I think it's Chilton made
exactly,
one, and I have
yeah,
the
Hayes.
Enterprise
This
one.
this one they did a Hayes manual. Yeah, Chilton's another.
Hayes, that's it. Hayes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I got
Oh,
one. I have one
oh,
last
sorry.
question for you. I have
Yeah.
one last question for you that I wanted to ask you because I kind of know what my answer is, but I was kind of curious to know what your answer is as a Back to the Future super fan. What is it about this movie to you, in your mind, that makes it stick around? Because there are people who right now there are certain movies and certain TV series that have stuck around and stood the test of time better than others. There have been some that I remember from my childhood, but I don't, nobody talks about them. But everyone loves Back to the Future. Everyone loves Ghostbusters. Everyone loves Dukes of Hazzard, Knight Rider. There's certain shows that have really stood the test of time. And as far as movies go, Back to the Future has really, really stood the test of time. What has made this? obvious like 1980s movie, because it is a very 80s movie, but what has made this movie so timeless in your opinion?
So, I mean, I might give you a couple different parts of an answer,
I love it.
but I think the first thing is what makes it work so well is it's all about, again, different generations. So
Mhm.
and Bob Gale talks about this, the co-creator writer of Back to the Future, is that when Back to the Future came out, the teenagers were reacting to Marty, but the parents were reacting to the stuff from the 50s. See, so
Mhm.
now the thing is the jokes. When we grew up, hey, a rerun, what's that? What's funny is the generation now, they don't know what a rerun is.
Right.
It's a circle of all these things that change, and all this stuff changes, but the crux of human interactions stays the same. You know what I mean? So the interest of love and desires and dreams and all that, those things are such human elements that those stay the same throughout the time, right? So,
Mhm.
Robin, please be quiet. We're finishing up.
We're almost done.
We're almost
Hang in
done. I
there.
promise, Robin. So like that I think that is what makes it so timeless, and it's a really good story, and the movie was done really well. The thing that I'm
Yeah.
most fascinated about, and I do go into a lot about the Stoltz stuff in my book because I've interviewed people that edited the Stoltz stuff. I mean, he was in the
Wow.
editing room, and the thing is, he was very serious and very. He was method acting, and he was not the Marty that we know. I
Isn't
really
that wild?
wonder. Yeah, I really do wonder if they didn't get the magic of Michael J. Fox, if Back to the Future would have been another Buckaroo. Like if it would have really caught the fever as much as it did. The
Probably.
lightning in the
I would
bottle.
say
I
probably
mean,
not.
Marty needs to be the right person, and
Right.
there's no one else better for that than Michael J. Fox. I mean, it's clear as day that was a role destined for him, and I'm glad it all eventually worked out because I think if Stoltz cut was, the Stoltz version was what was put out, it would have been just another 80s film. It would have been a cult thing. I've
Yeah.
actually thought it would be fun to make a fan documentary from the point of view that you have Eric Stoltz going around with like DeLorean time machines at like a RetroCon. And it's just this offshoot thing. It's this funky little thing, and then you have him narrating, and it goes into the back, and then that's how you could work into like actually like showing people the Stoltz stuff. Universal does still have that stuff. They made a 45-minute cut of it that they showed to the heads of of Universal and the production heads to say, look, this isn't working. People think it's like
Mm.
a full cut film, but it wasn't. I mean, it's the crux of what they filmed. You know what I mean? But it I wonder about that what if. And that's the thing too, the Back to the Future touches the what if.
Mhm.
Time travel, what if this, what if that, what if your dad didn't get hit by the car and now you don't exist.
Right.
There's a lot of subtle stuff in that film too. I mean, it's like,
I
everyone's
think
always,
it's the first I think it's the first movie that made people really think about time travel instead of just as a mechanism to take a modern piece and go back and do something as a period piece where, there are consequences in the future for what happens in the past. I can't think of a movie that had time travel where, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure in my lifetime, the first movie that really made you think like, "Oh, if you change something in the past, it isn't just like then you just go back to where you were in the present. It actually does change a whole bunch of stuff. Like everything could break."
well, the filmmakers acknowledge, and I would agree, is if you watch It's a Wonderful Life, they like Bob Gale and them, they consider like It's a Wonderful Life almost like a time travel film because when you think about it, remember, he was never born. Gosh, it's been so long since I've seen It's a Wonderful Life. It's a great movie, but it goes into the whole thing, like a whole different existence. So that theme has been touched before, but like you said, not in our generation. It was from
Right,
before.
right.
But I mean, if you watch like It's a Wonderful Life and compare it to the narrative breakdown of what happened in Back to the Future Part Two, when Biff has, the Bifferific version of 1985A and he controls everything, that's kind of like the Potterville of the It's a Wonderful Life. So I mean, the filmmakers have acknowledged that It's a Wonderful Life did have an effect on them. So again, that's again, if I think if a movie touches on some human aspect that is timeless, then it works. It's why, people still like Shakespeare all these years. It's
Mhm.
why classical, stories. I mean, even like Sherlock Holmes is something that keeps going on, and you
Sure.
know, uh, even certain comic books and stuff. I mean, growing up not having comic book movies, now there's comic book movies everywhere. But
Basically.
you know, but it's there is still these traits that just continue through, and I think that the Back to the Future captured it. The other thing too is I think part of why it was so great that we got to experience the stuff we did when we did is there was an aesthetic that was going on. And when I interviewed Michael Fink, who was the original construction coordinator for the DeLorean Time Machine, he and I talked about this found aesthetic where they would repurpose stuff to make it look like something else. Star Wars touched on it. Ridley Scott was famous for it.
Hmm.
And Michael Fink worked with Ridley Scott on Blade Runner. The idea that you can take like found items and repurpose them as something else. And
Yeah.
when it's on the magic again, and then it goes back to the magic of what's on screen. Like it fascinates me that Michael Fink was the brainchild, was the creator of the flux capacitor as we know it. They were having trouble figuring it out. Andrew Probert couldn't figure it out. He had an idea where it would be on the ceiling. Ron Cobb, who was the original illustrator, who was really designated to design the DeLorean, he had different ideas, even where it was on the outside the roof. When I interviewed him, he said it was one of those things. It was a last minute thing. He just could never get a handle on it. In my research, I found that Mike Fink bought the high voltage relays that they use as the guts of the time of the flux capacitor. And I did my interview with Michael, and it was the first Back to the Future interview I had ever done. And he said that, when they were having a meeting in the art department, talking about the flux capacitor, he had this, he knew these high voltage relays, and in his head, he just could see how otherworldly he could make it.
Hmm.
But like it could work. So, I mean, the flux capacitor, all it is an enclosure. They took these high voltage glass tube relays with their little brass mounts, they put them in, and they put little lights underneath them, chaser lights, and that's it. It's one of the most iconic props ever made,
It's
and
super
it's
simple.
super
And
neat. Yeah, but he's thinking aesthetically how looking at it on screen, how it could again look like something that could be something else, and he in his
mhm.
head could see the light going through the high voltage relays. So one of the things I did with my replica, I took a picture with a macro lens inside the flux capacitor, and I lit it with the lights in the flux capacitor. And I actually sent it to him. I said, "See, this is that otherworldly stuff you're talking about," and he really liked that. So it was neat that I took a picture and got to share it with him, and he responded. But that's the stuff I enjoy, is getting to have moments with people, whether it's the people that work on the films or fans like you that get to
Mhm.
enjoy stuff and everything. But yeah, I think that Back to the Future, it's just a total cycle of different time frames, what ifs, and again, at the end of the day, there's a human emotion, a human story that's still there, and that's what gravitates. Ghostbusters has the same aesthetic,
Yep.
I mean, the Knight Rider, Knight Rider is a tech aesthetic, more high tech, but even that, I mean, the Knight Rider car, Michael Cervey, the designer of the kit, was the final construction coordinator on the DeLorean Time Machine. So, like Michael,
Yeah,
and
he did a lot of Hollywood cars. He was known for knocking out Hollywood cars.
he did a bunch. I know his most famous was the Knight Rider car and the DeLorean. It's just
Mhm.
interesting. Like Andrew Probert, he did Battlestar Galactica too. Andrew was hired
Mhm.
to do storyboards, and he couldn't pass up the chance to design the DeLorean because he needed something in the storyboards. But his stuff is very high tech. It doesn't look like Doc Brown built it at home at all. And he knew Ron
Right.
Cobb was going to come and design the car, and as he says in interviews, he was a little bummed, but he wouldn't want anyone else to do it. Well, Ron was only on for a few weeks, so then they had Andrew take back over, and Ron took what Andrew took what Ron did and polished it out. So like Andrew added the second vent at the request of like Spielberg and Zemeckis, and Andrew flushed out the conduit bands around the car. So the final design sketches are Andrew's, and they're very close to the final car. But that's that creative process that I found so fascinating. I mean, the time machine wouldn't be what it would be unless Ron Cobb did his designs, which were very homemade and Radio Shack looking. So it's
Hmm.
I just love seeing how that, and then you get the guys that build the cars. They have to decipher these sketches and make it happen. So, but it's just Chaffee, Knight Rider, Probert, Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek, and Airwolf. And the
Hmm.
DeLorean Time Machine is nothing like them.
Yep, all different. Which
Yeah.
that just shows some artistic ability to be able to switch gears and make completely different things that are all that iconic. It's kind of
Yep.
impressive, actually.
Yep. And then like the Ecto One was Stephen Dane, and Stephen Dane also I think was on Buckaroo, which Michael Fink was on Buckaroo too. But I think Stephen Dane also did a lot with Ridley Scott on Blade Runner. See, so there was a definite aesthetic going on with those films at that time, and there's a lineage there, and it's kind of funny, but. I mean, it's kind of interesting. You don't really think Ridley Scott having that much effect on Back to the Future and Ghostbusters, but I think it had a bigger
Right.
effect than people really know.
I think you're
And
probably
that's all
right.
because of Alien.
Mhm.
The aesthetic he put in Alien and then Blade Runner,
Yep.
and then but then George
Before we
Lucas before
before
that. Sorry.
before we head out of here, I do want to take a second and thank the people that support the show financially, and those people include Best Man Al Schultz from New York Woodworks, Scott Orm from Dad It Yourself DIY, Ed Swanson from Ed's Clocks and More, Nick Birchtold of Birchtold Design Build, Tori Decker from Tori Did It, Jake Drews of Make with Jake, Megan Chris from Onyx Designs Woodwork, Christian Neary of Warren Works, Ken Madden of Mad K Studios, David Wood of DW Wood Builds, Dean Duplantis, Chris Raley of Route 9 Signs, Jeff Stein, a weird guy, Kim and Garrett from Kim and Garrett Make It, Rory Langefeld of RLO Woodworks and DIY, Robert J. Keller, Brian Arsenault, the Seven Hills Maker, Dave Bauer of Dave Bauer Art, Donald LeBlanc of Fun with Woodworking, Ross Cave, Jeremy Spees, Grant Alexander from the Clamp Podcast, Brad Harrison of Brad's Customs, Billy Polton of Polton Projects, Eric Peterson from Overall Makerworks, and Earl Van Alstine. I am so grateful for all the support financially for this show. If you have the means, I would appreciate it if you head on over to vincentmferrari.com/support and supported the show. But if you can't support the show financially, sharing the show, letting other people know about it. If you find a guest that you find interesting, letting the world know that I talked to that guest, that would be pretty cool too, because I love to promote the guests when they're on the show. As I told Tom before, it's the currency of doing the podcast. You promote the people that come on. And Tom, I am so grateful and so thankful that you came on. The funny story, and I've told the listeners, but I don't think I've actually told you, is so I actually met you on Saturday, and we chatted about the car, and we got back to my fiance's sister's house, which is where we were staying for the weekend, and I was talking, I was like, and my fiance goes, "You should have him on the podcast," and I went, "Damn, I should have him on the podcast." So then the next day I was like, "Yeah, you want to come on?" You're like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." So I'm very, very, very honored to have you on. I really did your car, not just for me, but for my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, and my fiance was one of the highlights of the show. Just seeing it, we all talked about it quite a bit afterwards, and how nice you were to me and how much time you spent chatting with me while they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna go walk a little bit, catch up to us." I'm like, "Okay, I'll get there." So, but I
I'm glad
really
you
do appreciate
enjoyed it. At the end of the day, yeah, I did do it for me because I wanted to
Uh-huh.
do it. But when other people get to enjoy it or enjoy the magic of the movie, or continue the legacy of the people that built the movies, it's neat.
Hmm.
I mean, the thing is, I never got out to Hollywood, but working on a couple of the documentaries with the Back to the Future, on the Blu-ray sets, some of the special features I've been involved with, and
Hmm.
for the 10-year-old me to pop in the Blu-ray and get a credit in there is very humbling and everything. It just happened that I got the chance to do some of that stuff, and I'm very thankful for all that. And, I mean, like I said, too, if you're in fandom or doing stuff, find good people to work with, like Stephen Clark at backtothefuture.com has helped me out a lot. So, like I say, we're all fans, but there's always ways to find a place in fandom. And, if you do hard work and put your energy into it, like Doc says, your future is whatever you make it. So make it a good one.
I agree. Where can people find you online? Where can people find your book? Where can people find more information about you?
I mean, I am on Facebook, and I mean, I do, I mean, I'm just another fan. I'm not some like celebrity. So, I mean, I am on Facebook. There's BTF Archives on Facebook. Is my mostly my stuff. I have a couple editors that help me out, but 95% of all the content on there is stuff I've put together. The book, you can get that through Amazon.com. They are the ones that print it. BackToTheFuture.com does carry it. So if you want to support BackToTheFuture.com, buy the book from them. Although I know he just put an order and he just sold out, but he will be stocking them soon because I
Okay,
handle that for him. But I mean, the book is build it with some style and unauthorized tales of the DeLorean time machine. I have a lot of photos inside the book of the actual cars, and like I said, it's all about how they made the movies and the film cars. And I
perfect.
do discuss the restorations of two of the cars that were restored. One of the Part 3 cars and the A car, of course.
Excellent. I will have the links for backtothefuture.com and the Amazon link so people can pick up the book and check it out because I know that with this podcast in particular, a lot of my listeners like to nerd out about stuff, and there's nothing nerdier than nerding out about the creation of a specific prop because that's I geek out about that kind of stuff all the time, which is why I've enjoyed talking to you so much. So thank you so much for giving me
Oh, you're
so much of your
welcome.
time,
Oh, you're
and thank
welcome.
you for being on. I will. I'll have all of Tom's links and ways to contact him, find his book, and all that in the show notes so that you can keep up with what he's up to. He's a really cool guy, and he's definitely friendly. So you could chat with him; he won't bite. Until next week, have a great week, everybody. I will chat with you then.